Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for our Business Owner Advisory webinar. My name is Russell Lindsay, and I look forward to a productive discussion today. This is our 7th webinar, and our goal each week is to provide up-to-date and timely info to help small business owners navigate and manage their business during these crazy times. If you are new and weren't able to join us over the last few weeks, our discussions have covered topics centered around relief for small business owners. And I would like to take a second and thank all of the regular attendees. We've had many of you who have signed in each and every week or most of the weeks to join in on our discussions. And can I just take a minute? I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. We appreciate the trust you have in us, and also we are very thankful for the depth of our relationship with you. It has been quite a ride, and we'll keep it going today, talking about the ever-changing Paycheck Protection Plan loan program. We are posting replays on our website at canopy360.com, so be sure to check them out. Our goal is to have a complete reference library on the PPP when we are finished. I'm curious, do you have any small business owners that seem lost on how to calculate their forgiveness? Or maybe they receive the PPP loan and now they are stuck and don't know what to do next? Would you feel comfortable inviting them to the June 3rd webinar? We would appreciate that. You can also send them a link to our website where they can find all 6 of the past recorded webinars. And maybe you'll be able to provide them just the info they're looking for. Who knows? Just a reminder, we're taking a vacation next week. Oh man, I'm hoping for that fruity drink with an umbrella in it now. I just can't wait. But then we'll be back in 2 weeks on June 3rd. So please set your calendar now so you don't miss out. So our next webinar will be Wednesday, June 3rd. So 2 weeks from today. Today, our discussion focus will be on some new guidance that just came out yesterday. I'm excited to share it with you. But before we get started, I asked last week for your help, and I didn't really get as much feedback as I was hoping for. We had about 50 plus attendees last week, but we only had 7 people complete the survey. So as a reminder, about 20 minutes after the webinar, you're going to receive an email with the survey. And I would just ask if you could please help us out and take just 2 minutes to complete it. We realize your time is valuable and you're busy, but your feedback does help you. I'll stop promptly at 1:30. For many of the regular attendees, the question and answer session is their favorite part. So especially when we have the participation and are able to ask questions and get answers on the spot. And I mean, there's a lot of successful business owners on here, so it's neat to kind of see, for me, I like to see the way each of you are looking at this, and sometimes it's very helpful because you're asking questions that I'm not thinking of. So you can use the Q&A button at the bottom, and we will make sure that we answer all of your questions today, or if any require research, we'll be sure to look into those and get back to you in a timely manner. My name's Russell Lindsay, and I'm a CPA and one of the partners here at Canopy 360. And we have a team of 28 of us who target to advise and help small business owners in the areas of accounting, tax planning, consulting, and wealth management. All right, so let's get started. We left you last week with these topics, which we were waiting on guidance for. will the measurement period start date change, the FTE headcount reduction, and salary and wage reduction, and then also what do we do with expenses owed prior to but paid during the measurement period. So I'm excited to tell you that the SBA released new guidance just yesterday, and they also gave us most of the answers we were looking for. And they gave us a sneak peek into the loan forgiveness application. As you may be aware, at the end of your 8 weeks period, after you receive your loan, you'll need to fill out the loan forgiveness application and then submit it to the bank. And the bank will have 60 days to review what you turn in and then approve your forgiveness. The guidance released yesterday does give us most of the answers to many of the questions we've been waiting on. So I'll jump in and go through the answers to the questions we found yesterday. And then I'm also going to show you an overview of the PPP loan forgiveness application. All right, so here's our first question, and it has a few points. When does your measurement period start? So the measurement period starts on the same day as your PPP loan distribution date. So what if you receive your loan disbursement on multiple days? Then your measurement period is going to start on the day that you received your first disbursement of the loan. So for example, if you received your PPP loan proceeds on Monday, April 20th, the first day of your measurement period is Monday, April the 20th, and the last day will be Sunday, June 24th. This gets us into another interesting question we have heard a lot from a lot of you, which is, well, what if my payroll schedule doesn't match up with my measurement period start date? So the SBA addressed this and they made it pretty convenient. So what if your payroll period and measurement period, what if those two dates are not the same day? Well, first I'd say that you're probably like almost everybody else, because I haven't seen many cases where those two dates line up. So what is the fix? Borrowers may elect to calculate payroll costs using the 8-week period or the 56 days total that begins on the first day of their first pay period following their PPP loan disbursement date. So this is great. Thank God for this, because we were really worried that we were going to have to do some crazy calculations on the front end and the back end. So what does this mean? So you will use the corresponding number of payroll periods starting after you receive your funds, so you don't have to do those partial calculations. So this is just great. So you know, if for example, you know, your pay period runs Monday to Sunday, and you get your loan proceeds on a Tuesday or a Thursday or a Friday, you just start with that next Monday's pay period. And if you're weekly, use the next 8 weeks. If you're bi-weekly, use the next 4 pay periods. Bi-monthly, use the next 4 pay periods. So that's really good. That'll help help a lot. Next, we've discussed the question, this is pretty interesting too, the question of how many hours do we use to calculate a full-time equivalent. We had gone back and forth on this, and the answer is 40 hours. It is stated specifically in the new loan forgiveness application. It says after you calculate the average number of hours in a week, divide by 40 hours, and then round to the nearest 10th of a full-time equivalent. So there you have it. I don't know how many of you have started using our calculator and looking at the full-time equivalents. I I don't know about you, but I'm wondering if anybody has seen how tedious and time consuming it is doing those calculations on not only on the baseline, there's 2 periods for the baseline full-time equivalent, and then there's also the period of time for your 8 weeks, and a lot goes into it. So another cool thing that's new is there is a simplified method for calculating your full-time equivalents. It is available at the election of the borrower. So if you decide you want to use this simplified method, you can. And what it does is it allows you to use the number 1 for all employees that work 40 hours or more. And then it allows you to use the number 0.50 for employees who work fewer hours. So you have an employee that works 40 hours a week, employee that works 50 hours a week, use 1 for them. Employee that works 39 hours, 20 hours, 10 hours, 27 hours, they're all treated the same, use 0.5. Just add those numbers up and there's your full-time equivalent. So that might take a little bit of the work out of it for you. So I'm curious, I haven't run the numbers yet on any of the calculations as I was getting prepared today for this chat. I'm going to be curious to see which option, is better. But I think this is definitely going to simplify it. Also, if you have an employee that earns pay, it is considered earned. So in other words, if I work today, I've earned pay today, and that pay has been incurred by my company. So payroll costs incurred, but not paid during the borrower's last pay period of the measurement period, are still eligible for forgiveness if they are paid on or before the next regular payroll date. So in other words, let's just say my pay period ends on Friday this week, and I worked and I did something and I earned pay or a bonus or some form of compensation, but it wasn't calculated until after this week, and it's beyond my measurement period. As long as it's on the next pay period, I can still count it. So that's pretty cool in my opinion. So is March rent an approved expense? We have had the question quite a bit. I didn't pay my March, or I didn't pay my April rent, which was due before my measurement period. Can I use this expense in the calculation of my forgiveness if I pay it during my measurement period? And there are likely other examples of this type of question, maybe with different transactions. So what does the forgiveness application state? It specifically says that an eligible non-payroll cost must be paid during the measurement period or incurred during the measurement period and paid on or before the next regular billing date, even if the billing date is after the measurement period. So paid means paid during the measurement period. And what does incurred mean? Incurred means the bill had a service date during the measurement period. So the way that I interpret this is I find this wording to be rather accommodative and helpful to the borrower. So if you had a lease that was in place before February 15th of 2020, then you can count all the rent payments paid during the 8-week measurement period. So if you paid March or April rent in the 8-week measurement period, I think you can count that rent. And you can also count the rent for the 8 weeks or the 2 months during your measurement period, as long as those costs are paid as well. So the only catch I see is you have to make sure you don't exceed the 25% limit. So in other words, if you got a $100,000 loan 25% of that is 25,000. So 25,000 of your loan can be spent on interest, rent, and utilities, those non-payroll costs. So I think this is pretty cool. I know there's a client on here that was asking that question about March and April. So we can definitely include any of those payments that were made during your measurement period. All right, so then we have the salary and wage reduction. So borrowers must complete a worksheet to determine whether to reduce the amount of their loan forgiveness for which they might be eligible if this applies. So what circumstances must occur to require you to have to fill out this worksheet? Well, did you have any employees whose salaries, whether they're salary or hourly, where their pay was reduced by more than 25% during the measurement period as compared to the first quarter of 2020? So you look January through March of 2020, and then you look at their pay during the 8-week period. You take an average pay period compensation for those two periods. And if during the measurement period, it was if their pay reduced by more than 25%, then this situation is going to apply to you. And if you have employees that fall into this category, you'll need to run through the calculation and see how much you'll be required to reduce your PPP loan forgiveness amount. So here is a link. So when we send this out, you'll have this link to the PPP forgiveness application. So in a minute, let me share it on my screen and I'll walk us through an overview of this application. I did read through this application in detail and I did analyze it in depth. I would like to point out if going on history, if history is any indication of what to expect, there are likely going to be changes to it. So this is version 1 of the PPP loan forgiveness application, and I highly doubt it'll be the final version. When we send you an email in about 20 minutes after this with the survey, we really appreciate if you'll fill out the survey. Did I say that yet? So we'll please fill out the survey, and we'll also have a copy of this loan application in there for you to take a look at. And I don't know, maybe COVID-19's got you having trouble sleeping at night. So if that's the case, then just pull out this application and I think you'll be good to go, put you right to sleep. So let me share my screen and I'll walk you through it real quick. 1 second. All right, so let's see here. I think I am sharing the, Becca, can you see the application?
Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, so you'll notice this loan forgiveness application is 11 pages. So so first you have your instructions for the PPP loan forgiveness calculation form. So you have 2 pages of solid instructions. Here are those definitions of the summary of costs that are eligible for forgiveness. And then you go into the actual calculation form. So there's quite a bit of information in here. If any of these items, like let's see, one for example, your covered period or your measurement period, you'll enter that in there. If you're like unsure what the covered period is, you can come back to the instructions and it'll tell you exactly how to fill that in right here in your instructions. So you've got 2 pages of instruction for this calculation form. The calculation form is 1 page. You'll also notice there are quite a bit of certifications that you as the borrower are going to be initialing off on, just like you have in the past. So, you know, there are some significant penalties if any of the information you're providing is false. So I would, you know, obviously be sure that you know what you're doing and that you're providing the correct information. Then there is a Schedule A. So you've got a page of instructions for the Schedule A. And then you have, this is what your Schedule A looks like. So then you have instructions for what's called a Schedule A worksheet. This is where that salary and hourly wage reduction come into play. So right here, it kind of gives you step by step on how to, if you have an employee that fell into that category of their wage reducing by more than 25%, you'll want to just run the numbers through here for that employee. So you've got 2 pages of instructions on this Schedule A worksheet. And then you've got the Schedule A worksheet that you'll be attaching. So obviously most of us probably have, you know, more than this, or some of us have more than this many employees. So you will enter the information for every employee. And then you also have a documents requirement. So this will give you in great detail what documents are required. And then there is also a voluntary demographic information form. So it's completely optional. So just in case in the first 10 pages you weren't able to spend enough time filling out this application, they want you to give them some more information. So let me get back to the presentation here. So we'll send you a copy of this to look over if you're doing the loan forgiveness calculations on your own. And then we'll also have this link that you can click out to the SBA website, and you know, as they update this application, it'll give you access to the most recent application. So do you have a business strategy for how you will calculate your PPP loan forgiveness? You can, you know, when you think about what are the options that you can consider, you can use our calculator and we'll provide it to you on a complimentary basis. I do want to note this is a do-it-yourself method, and we will give you the calculator and you can figure out how to use it. We've had a lot of people asking about the password for our calculator, and we will not be giving out the calculator password because the calculator is set up for you to only enter in the yellow boxes. So, and it's an estimating tool that will help you get a feel looking forward, and then you can fill in this application when you're ready to submit everything to the bank. So with regard to this do-it-yourself method, when we give it to you, kind of we are not able to just sit waiting on standby for you when you have questions on how to use the calculator. We are using these webinars as a way to provide some complimentary information. And I don't want to sound rude because we want to be super helpful. We have got an extreme volume of calls and clients that are having us do the calculations for them. And by the way, we still have tax season that's due. So we are trying our best to help everybody as best as we can. But if we're giving you the calculator, it's kind of a complimentary tool. Your other option is if you simply don't have time or you can't figure it out, or maybe you just feel unsure and worried about getting the calculation correct, well, then we're here to help, and we are offering a service to help calculate PPP loan forgiveness. And so we'll start with a checklist, and we'll get you that checklist. We will request that you give us everything in the order of that checklist and that you give us everything on that checklist. And then we can work on the calculations, putting together all the required documentation. And at the end of that 8-week period, we'll have everything ready to go with the application and ready to submit to the bank. If you'd like to discuss this service and hire us to do your PPP loan forgiveness, send an email to John Golden or Tanner Emmons, and one of them will be happy to reach out to you to start that process. We've been going strong for 7 weeks in a row now, and here is our upcoming schedule. We'll be off next week, and then we hope to see you back here again in 2 weeks on June 3rd. We do anticipate that there might be one more version of our calculator in the coming weeks. So we'll basically be coming back in 2 weeks. We'll take another break on June 2nd, and then our goal on June 17th is to wrap up this series on that day. So hopefully we'll have everything you need to be able to get all the way through your loan forgiveness calculations. So if you have any questions, that kind of wraps up our discussion for today. So let's get into those questions. I want to encourage you to ask questions because these help us plan and provide for the information that we'll need to cover in the next few webinars. And remember, at the bottom of your screen, there is a Q&A button where you can submit your questions. All right, so here we go. Let's see, looks like we have a few questions. So are we to include part-time employees? Yes, definitely. When you talk about time earned, does that include overtime? Yeah, so I'm glad you're asking that, Marilyn. This overtime can get a little complicated. So the pay for overtime counts in the payroll costs. So you can include that overtime pay as part of the payroll costs. Those hours for overtime do not get included in the FTE calculations. And I think that simplified method, that new simplified method, is really helpful because it helps with this particular question on overtime, which is, you're going to use, if you're using that simplified method, you're going to use one for that FTE, whether they're working 40 hours or whether they're working 50 hours. And then you're going to use half if they're working less than 40 hours. So you will not use overtime hours. Just to clarify, you will not use overtime hours in the FTE calculations, but you will include overtime pay in the payroll costs. And then you're asking, how is bonus added to your worksheet? It'll show up, you want to run it through your payroll, add the line item of bonus, and then that'll be on the employee's paycheck during their 8-week period. and we will just include that in that gross wages for that pay period. Okay, so I'm glad you're asking a specific question. This is good. Our check came on your PPP funds were deposited on May 5th, but our payroll period started May 4th. What period do we use? The one starting May 4th or the next one starting May 18th? I think we'll use May 18th because that'll be your first pay period that will fall after, and then we'll use. I'm trying to remember. I think you guys are bi-weekly, so we'll start with May 18th, and then we'll use the next 4 pay periods. So David, your question, what if funds are received during the middle of a payroll period and you use the funds to pay that payroll period? I think that's okay, David. That's more of a kind of an accounting mechanism. So when you turn in your loan forgiveness application, they're not going to be like, show us your bank statement and the use of all the funds. It's going to be more of document all the payroll. So I think in that particular instance, we'll just use, even though you might have taken the funds out of that account to pay for those, we'll just use the following pay periods. We'll start with the next pay period, and that won't be an issue. Does the PPP assistance fee we paid include you looking over our shoulder with the loan forgiveness? If not, what is the fee amount? Okay, yes. So the original PPP assistance fee was to prepare the application and organize all those documents. And our fee for the loan forgiveness, we have 2 options. You know, the way that it is an inordinate amount of work. So our minimum fee is $1,250 to do the forgiveness package and application. So that's our minimum fee. The way we calculate the fee is 1.5% of your loan if you're biweekly or bi-monthly, and 1.75% of your loan if you're weekly. And so you can calculate it on the percentage, and if that number is greater than $1,250, then that will be your fee. And if that number is less than $1,250, your fee will be $1,250. What utilities can be included? Recurring monthly expenses like web storage, domain names, online software costs. Yeah, James, all of those expenses are unfortunately not included. So it's kind of been that standard answer of utilities is electric, gas, water, transportation. I've had a lot of questions about transportation of does that include fuel? It does not include fuel. It's if you pay any fees to transport your gas or your utilities to get it for usage, and then also telephone and internet. But those web storage, domain names, online software, unfortunately, those don't count based on the way that the current application reads. We are using a separate account to hold our PPP loan and move over amounts to our bank account when needed, as suggested. To clarify, we are not to include payroll taxes in this amount, right? Cheryl, that's a good question. So the employer payroll taxes for Social Security and Medicare are not included. The employee taxes for Social Security, Medicare, and federal withholding are included because we're using gross pay. And then also the employer taxes for state unemployment are also included. Tracy, what if you used overtime hours to figure out the FTE on the original paperwork? Not including it now is going to lower our FTE number. Yeah, that's a good question, Tracy. On the application for loan, so on the original application, it sounds like you counted in overtime. So that original application is going to have some number that is essentially, now we're discovering, is incorrect. So on the new loan forgiveness application, there's also a box where you're going to put in your FTE at the time of the loan and your FTE at the end. And so that's where I think you'll correct it. So you'll put the correct number of FTEs on your loan forgiveness application. James, a 501c6 organization was approved and got funds, but it now seems that that type of organization is not eligible for the PPP program. Any clarity or advice you can provide there? I'm gonna have to look into that, James. To be honest, I haven't had any nonprofit organizations that I've participated in the application process, and so I'm not quite sure on that one, but I'll definitely, Becca, can we mark that question for James, and we will get back to you on that, James, on what to do. It sounds like my initial gut is that if 501c6 organizations are not eligible, that they're gonna need to pay it back. So let me find out that answer and you and I sync up before you pay it back, but I'm thinking that's going to be the answer. All right, Cheryl, do we know yet how the FFCRA credits for payroll will affect our upcoming taxes for 2020? Does this have to be paid back as well, or we'll have some calculations that will need to be done later? So let me just remind myself what the FFCRA credits are. Okay, so those FFCRA, I think those are the paid leave credits. Okay, so the paid leave credits are going to be claimed on your second quarter 941. So that's the 941 that will be filed in July for the second quarter. Even if, so there's some situations where businesses earned those credits in March, which fell in the first quarter, but it was like at the end of March, and they came out with these credits, and then they're like, we've got these credits and we'll tell you how to figure them out later. And then everybody filed their first quarter 941 and they didn't have that information. So the good news is all of your FFCRA credits for the first quarter and the second quarter can be claimed on your second quarter 941. So you'll want to work with your payroll company provider to make sure that you let them know. A lot of those payroll company providers, it rolls into July, which is the third quarter. They have all your information. They just automatically submit the 941. So if it were me, I would reach out to them and let them know that you're going to have some of those FFCRA credits, and then ask them, how each payroll company is a little different, how they want you to provide them with that information so that you can take advantage of those credits on the second quarter. Sorry, Louise, I'm just seeing in the chat that you wanted to make the view larger, and I'm about 20 minutes late on that. So I'm sorry I didn't catch that earlier. Okay, so we're wrapping up. If there's any last minute questions, please ask them. Otherwise, we will finish up. Let me get back to where we were. Okay, so we hope you found today helpful. Thank you for joining us. And if you could please help us out, we're going to send you the survey in about 20 minutes. Take a couple minutes to fill it out. We would really appreciate that. We'll send you a copy of the application. If you need a copy of our calculator, we can get you another copy or a first copy. We hope this is beneficial to you, our small business owners and clients. And please, if you know of any friends, will you please invite them? We would love to help. All right, doesn't look like we have any more questions, so I hope you all have a nice day. Thank you for joining us.